Brandi Carlile. Welcome. I'm so
Hi.
excited to have you here. I'm Hunter Kelly. This is from Nashville Music Talks with Hunter Kelly at the 92nd Street Y, based in New York City. And you have the number one book on the New York Times bestseller list, Broken Horses.
I
I
know.
number one. I how does it feel 24 hours after you found out?
Surreal, like
Yeah.
utterly surreal. I went to like the outdoor emporium to buy like fishing supplies today, and I wanted to just run around and pull my mask down and be like, I've got the number one New York Times bestseller. I've got the number one New York Times bestseller. And I didn't, but I wanted to at
Well, that's
Outdoor
because you're
Emporium.
that's because you're classy. But you know, I do think a bumper sticker on your car would be a good move or something.
I
Because
hadn't
I
thought of
mean,
this, but
yeah, just I mean, was that in your you've been doing so much promotion for this book, with Leslie Jordan, Dolly Parton. I mean, it's been insane. I can't believe I'm in that lineup. First of all, so thank you. Um,
you're an
did you kind of
esteemed part of that lineup.
Thank you. Did you have it? Was this on your radar? Did you let yourself think about it? Yeah, you did.
I
Maybe a little
did.
bit.
Yeah, I was pretty obsessed with hitting the list, being on the
Yeah.
list, I just wanted to be a New York Times best-selling author at some point in my life, and I had sort of equated it in my mind to, like, my high school diploma, like getting a high school diploma.
Mhm.
And, but when I found out that Broken Horses was number 1, it was just affirmation that I can't really describe to you. I'm
Yeah.
still dealing with it because it's a whole new kind of achievement for me in a very new space, you know?
Yeah. I'm curious to know because you've released so many albums and you're familiar with what that's like, but when you release an album, it's lyrics and you have plausible deniability, or you can kind of, all your business is not up front. With this book, it was like you really were laying a lot out there. So how was it different from an album release?
Well, the interviews are all like an hour instead of 10
Yeah.
minutes, 15 minutes, and you're talking to me about big, deep, scary stuff instead of like, "Which thing
Mhm.
comes first, the words or the music?" You know? And
Yeah.
I've just been going to sleep at like 10, just exhausted, and then waking up again at 2 in the morning and being up for hours and stressed about the next day, and it's hard. It's like it's been hard to talk about this stuff,
Mhm.
and, it's slowly settled in that this is what I'm doing, and then to find out that it resonated with so many people and that it
Yeah.
was number 1 on the list was like, oh, so worth it.
Yeah. You talk about so much, from your childhood, and we talked a lot about that in our interview for, Proud Radio and Apple Music Country, so people can go check that out. A lot of your, especially the story about your faith and coming back, it's just so inspirational. What I wanted to talk about and start off with about Broken Horses is really, later in your journey,
Mhm.
when you started having adult relationships, as a queer woman, and then also just, um, creating a family. I think there's so much value in this book. Um, I can imagine that when you were writing this book, because you say it, there are things that you wanted to convey because you didn't find a lot of reading material about, creating your family. Uh,
Yeah.
how was that in mind as you were writing?
Well, my wife would tell you that I'm still not having an adult relationship, but it it is in my writing everywhere because my marriage, to Catherine and our journey into starting a family,
Mhm.
it was a little underthought, by me, and I hadn't really thought about representation since I came out of the closet at that point. Like,
Mhm.
'cause I remember coming out of the closet without ever having met a gay person or even having a girlfriend or even having a girl I had a crush on even. And but, like, seeing girls on TV that I had crushes on or whatever. Like, I had a crush on Leanne Rimes. I think I was, like, at the time, Blue had just come
Was it
out,
the
and I had all
yodeling? It was the
she
yodeling, wasn't it?
she was just so cute and sweet, and I would try to sort of picture, you know, dating or hand-holding or these physical encounters, with women, and girls my age, and I could never picture the other person being a woman because I just
Mhm,
hadn't seen it. I didn't understand how that would take place. It's hard
mhm,
when you've never seen two women kiss or hold hands or walk through the park with their child, or two women on top of a wedding cake, that kind of thing.
mhm,
It does feed you positive images and help you understand the template for what your life could look like
mhm,
potentially. And for that reason, I was like, this is really weird because I can't think like this. I know this is me, but I can't think like this. And then I
mhm.
sort of put it out of my mind. Cut to, I get married and we're talking about having kids. And
Yeah,
I'm like, how do you two mom?
yeah,
How do we do this thing? Especially if I'm not pregnant, what am I?
yeah,
And it was crazy how that imaging came back to the lack of that imaging came back to bite me. And what became a journey that resulted in me wanting to be a part of providing imaging and representation for other people.
yeah. I mean, you go so far as to have your daughter Evangeline's birth certificate, um, in the book because you're listed as the father. You say at one point that, no matter what gender is going to rear its head when you're in the process
Yeah.
of birth.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about that and how you came. Of course, we have the song "The Mother," which I understand is your mantra. You came up with a
Mhm.
mantra to really put yourself in that role.
Yeah, I needed to because, signing that birth certificate under the father template, and then not having an adequate role in the birthing classes and all that
Mhm,
stuff, and I talk about it in the book, but it's not just being put in this father in this paternal role that's hard. It's
mhm,
also the fact that kind of unjustly, I think dads get made fun of a
mhm,
lot in that process and
mhm.
teased. And it's just kind of one of those heteronormative, folksy
Yeah.
realities, but I don't think it's the most empowering way to co-parent in an equal way. I think, and I'm not trying to judge the straight folks, but I'm just saying that, getting called up to the front of the birthing class so that you can get laughed at because you put the diaper on the doll backwards is like
Yeah.
the part of every birthing class, and having to walk up with those dads and do that was, like, soul destroying for
Yeah.
me because I didn't feel like a dad. I was experiencing something akin to even maybe grief about not being pregnant,
Mhm.
you know, with Evangeline. And then to add sort of laughter and exclusion on top of that, it was a hard road into parenting for me. And then she's born, and I don't know how to get her to stop crying, and I'm bad at holding her, and I'm not the one breastfeeding, so she doesn't want anything to do with me. And I had to write it as a mantra. Like,
Mhm.
and basically it was this way to remind myself, no matter what you feel like, the world doesn't see, you know, you are the mother of Evangeline. I am the
Yeah.
mother of Evangeline. I'm the mother of Evangeline. And I have to say it over and over again. And that song is me falling in love with my role and with my daughter in real time.
Yeah. Okay, so I learned so much from that birth certificate, just going back to it. First of all, you were born on June 1st, 1981, and I was
Mhm.
born 3 days later on June 4th, 1981, which just was, like, insane. But are you ready for this? Your daughter's name is Evangeline Ruth, and my grandmother is Ruth Evangeline. Here's a picture of her.
I just heard my wife, she audibly gasped in the
Yes.
next room.
So this is my Meemaw. This hurt. She was in a
Ruth
beauty pageant.
Evangeline.
She was in a beauty pageant for the nursing home. But I mean, I just, isn't that's insane.
Can we
Like
talk about another creepy thing?
what? Oh, yeah, the
This
Judd
shirt
connection.
and the photo in the background of
Yeah.
this interview?
So let me see. That is That is me at 14 at Winona's fan club party. I was the section leader for Winona at 14 on CompuServe, which is like back in the day when we had early internet. But yeah, and your first three concerts were the Judds. I'm so jealous. I never got to see them live.
No.
Well, not together. Back I saw the reunion tours, but not, the three shows.
Yeah, it was,
What impact did that have on you back in the
huge.
day? Yeah.
Like, oh my god, there were as an esoteric impact, there was a musical impact, there was
Mhm.
a relationship with my mother impact.
Mhm.
Um, it was they floored me, and I remember that I remember my very first concert going to see the Judds at the Puyallup Fair. It must have been in the late '80s, and it was one of those ones where, I mean, there was a lot of people there. It was a
Mhm.
grandstand at the fair, but they're just enormous. Like these things hold, like they're for rodeos and stuff.
Mhm.
They hold. I'm not allowed to curse, am I?
Yeah, you can say shit or
Okay,
whatever.
or I'll be careful about that. I just almost did, and I'm like, stop yourself. Um, there are rows of like bleachers that aren't filled even for a huge concert like the Judds in the '80s. And I remember walking up and sitting in those seats with my mom, and we had to leave early. And I just remembered seeing them and thinking that they were like rock stars from another planet. And I didn't think that they would ever be able to see me, you know, as
Mhm.
this little girl. And we were leaving the arena early and they were singing, I think, Love Can Build a Bridge. And Naomi catches a glimpse of me leaving the arena with my mom, holding my mom's hand. And she gave me what's the queen wave, the
Oh,
princess
yeah.
wave. She waved at me and pointed, and I know it was me she was
Yeah,
waving at because I was the only little girl leaving that place. And that blew me away. I was
yeah.
like, they're people. Like, that's not a screen. That's like a stage. They're
That's
really
yeah.
on it.
Well, and I just wonder if you've ever thought about the harmony of the Judds and making its way into your harmony with the twins because, in working on the Judds music, how it worked was Winona sang lead, and then she sang a high harmony, and then Naomi sang the lower harmony on the records. So what you're hearing is a trio on those records.
I
So
know
I
there's a
just
lot of three-part. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's just an interesting thing because I think that it excites me when you sing that three part with Phil and Tim, in the same, it's just something about that.
Yeah.
Uh well, I do want to ask a little bit more about your growing up. And this book, Reading Broken Horses, has brought up a lot for me of when I first
Mm.
came out.
Mhm.
Um, I'm thinking about just, I think there's a Reba song called New Fool in an Old Game that I still use. I still give to like friends who are coming out. And I'm like, well, first of all, when you go try to date, it's a new world. And I think that's an interesting thing because, like you were saying earlier, we don't see that on television. We don't see kind of, I know when I started going to the gay bars, it was like, I don't know what to do. This is not like, the TV shows I've watched. And you write so honestly in Broken Horses about, your relationships and learning the ropes with Kim. I mean, and learning the ropes from I know I sought out older guys who'd been around to be like, hey, tell me what's up. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, just thank you for writing that part because it's bringing a lot up for me just about um yeah, I'd never seen it written like so specifically like that before.
Yeah. I feel like it was important, it's
Yeah.
and, it's the best thing to feel like you're not alone in the world when you are specific about about experiences in your life, and then you find, like,
Mhm.
all these other queer people, like, not even in as close in age as you and I are, but just coming
Mhm.
up to me and being like, "Oh my god, my faith trauma," or "the gay
Mhm.
bars," or "I
Yeah.
only dated older people forever," like,
Yeah.
coming up to me and saying all these things and just making me feel like I was so much less alone than I ever thought I was, and I
Yeah.
wish I had just had more to connect to, and then I would have known that.
Yeah. I just love and Kim, I just really wanna hang out with Kim. I just
Oh my god, she would love you.
No,
She
so
would love
she
you.
it just reminds me, like, my favorite bar in Nashville, hands down, is Lipstick Lounge. Have you been? You
Yeah,
know
yeah,
Lipstick Lounge, yeah.
yeah.
So it just reminds me of all
Holly
my
Williams
gals
took me
there.
there years ago for karaoke, and I actually took my mom.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what did you sing?
Probably the Judds. Probably the
Probably.
Judds.
Oh, okay. Well, when you come back to town, we're going again because I miss it so.
Cool.
One of the passages I want to have you read, and this is the first one we have. Another thing in processing, those early days of me coming out, I'm thinking back on, and I hadn't really unpacked this, but I came out in 2005, and in 2006 we had an election in Tennessee, and it was on the ballot to ban gay marriage, and it passed. And
Mhm.
so for me, seeing that, because when gay marriage was finally legalized, it took me by surprise how much I felt accepted, having rights that I did not have before, and I didn't. And I'm just now unpacking that, seeing that that vote in 2006 in my home state banning gay marriage before it was even on the table, just how what message that sent. That's girl. There's so much that this book is bringing up for me. So, but yeah,
That's like the best thing you could tell me is that
yeah,
there's so much this book is bringing up for you.
yeah. It's weird. And in this process, I'm wondering if you went back and because I think we live a lot of life now that we're both approaching 40.
Mhm.
And I think at some point, you have the time where you kind of reckon with your childhood, but then there's this like your younger 20s that you have to go back and process. Did that happen in this book?
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
did. It made me, struggle in ways that with my family that I haven't in years too, just in my head,
Mhm.
you know? But, like, going back and readdressing my childhood and the thoughts that I didn't admit that I was having, and
Mhm.
even I didn't even admit that I was having in interviews and, like, in press and in the work that I've done since I got a record deal and stuff, like, and I don't think it's because I was lying about not having these internal and external
Mhm.
struggles or coping with rejection. I just don't think I was facing it.
Mhm.
Like, I think that when I went to write this thing and I wound up mining my memories, I was like, God, shit, actually, that was really hard
Yeah.
and weird. And I mean, I had these blinders on the whole time. And for some reason, I don't now. And I don't always like that I don't now, you know,
Mm. Yeah.
because I don't like to think about some of those things. I'm a very positive, forward motion based person, but it was good to
Yeah.
go back and look at it and to tie up some of those loose ends emotionally for
Yeah.
me. And I'm really glad it's bringing up stuff for you. And I'm glad it's bringing up stuff for other people too, because,
Mhm.
I'd rather it come up now than, for it to
Yeah.
actually make us physically ill. I
Yeah.
don't want us to have shorter lifespans than other people because we've had to ignore the
Mhm.
trauma of rejection in our youth.
Yeah. Well, and I think in reading this book, you talk a lot about struggling with realizing that you do have a lot of privilege, you know, um, in your life, but also, one of the things I want to stress in that is, I've found that if you don't work through your own shit, then you're not going to be able to show up fully to
Mhm.
to do work and help others. Um, and that's going to come up later in this conversation because your creative process and evolution is fascinating to me. Um, but before we get into that, I do want you to read from page 171 in the book, and
Okay.
this is about just reckoning with yourself when you were ready to get married. And I think it's a thing where, as we were talking about before, the idea of getting married, it's an adjustment for us as gay because for so long it wasn't a part of the equation or a possibility
I
uh,
know.
for us in our generation.
I remember being like 23 maybe, and when, and Emily from the Indigo Girls, who's like one of my great heroes in life, she
Mhm.
told me in passing one day, she probably doesn't even remember it. She was like, "Yeah, kiddo, about marriage equality." She goes, "I don't think we're gonna see it in our lifetimes, but
Mhm.
that's not what we're working for. We're not working for our lifetimes."
Mhm. Yeah.
And it was so I was distraught because first of all, she's always right.
Mhm.
And I just thought, "Oh, I won't see it in my lifetime."
Yeah.
you know? And then and then 8 years later it was so.
Yeah.
So, you know. So I
Yeah.
say, when you are told your whole life that it's wrong for two women or two men to marry, when your homeland agrees, and when you realize that you believe it too, deep within your primitive senses, a reckoning is imperative. It's a process, but it's mandatory whether you're LGBTQ or not. A person's self-worth is dictated by what inalienable rights are allowed to them. The right not to live your life alone is a big one.
Yeah. The primitive senses, I think, is what I was getting to there, because it really, um, when I've had friends started to get married, it was, it's a shift. It's a new thing that's never happened before, and it goes against everything we've seen mirrored to us. I just love that you had 3 weddings. But that was before it was y'all had a civil union. What did y'all in 2013 when y'all got married?
We had we had 3 weddings, and
Yeah, you did,
we
internationally.
we did, and we could not afford that, and we did, I was just going through an epic breakup where I, had, like, n nothing left to speak of, and then we had to hire an immigration attorney and try to get it so that she could live here during an international marriage ban, or, a federal marriage ban, I should say, which was beyond prohibitive. And then somehow in the midst of that, we decided to go ahead and have 3 weddings. And they were all very different and very, very interesting. We meant to have 2 weddings, but we found out during that time, Catherine found out that her father, had and has, is living with leukemia. And that was when he told her that
Mm,
that was the case, because his first chemotherapy was going to be on the date that we chose to have our wedding here in the United States. And so we were like, "Okay, we're gonna pack up and we're gonna go out to dad then." So we did. We headed out to, Plymouth, Wareham, Boston-ish area, and got married out there. And then we had our big barn burner, literal barn wedding here, just outside of town a little bit, and we went to, like, an Eagles club and did karaoke all night and stuff like that. And then in February, we had our London
yeah,
wedding for the London contingency of Catherine's life, which is vibrant and
yeah,
brilliant and, like, just unthinkable to leave. And I'll never stop being grateful for that, but
yeah.
that was a really wild one, that London one, man, those
I'm just
Brits and all
jealous
those
that you
Brit repressions, like, cut loose.
I'm just jealous you get to hear Catherine's accent every day. Like, is it still a joy?
It never gets old. I could listen to her talk from morning till night, and it's like the kids impersonate her, and she's constantly, she hates the word nagging, but just telling me off, and it's like it's a comedy routine, like, 24/7, it really is.
Okay. Well, tell her I had a spot of tea before we started. So,
Well, she's watching, so she knows.
okay,
She
good.
knows what
Hey,
we did.
hey, Catherine, I'm a big fan. So, Brandy, I think it's time to move into your career. Let's talk about your music career. That's another aspect of this book. I got a music business degree in college.
Oh, cool.
It was Belmont University in Nashville. It was the only college I applied to. It was like the only place I wanted to go because there was a recording studio there. And I was like,
Okay.
this is my home, you know,
Yeah.
this is where I'm going. But I think reading your book there's so much insight here that you give as an artist and
Mhm.
producer and things that you've learned that are so valuable that I want on the record because I see this series here at the 92nd Street Y kind of like an inside the actor studio type thing for
Mhm.
musicians. So feel free to get as nerdy as you want
Okay.
as we talk about this.
Yeah, I was
So
worried about that with a book. I didn't wanna feel, like, too music businessy to people, that wasn't
yeah, well, I mean,
the
or then
I
we can talk
enjoy
about
talking about it.
we can talk about definitely the creativity. I think it's just dealing with just a lot of growth, that you had. So first of all, I wanted a little more. Well, first of all, let's talk about about Phil and Tim and
Mhm.
the setup of Brandi Carlile. This is fascinating to me. So I remember years ago looking at a Sade album, and
Oh, yeah.
Sade is a band, and Sade Adu is the lead singer. So it's very
Mm.
simple, So Brandi Carlile is the lead singer of Brandi Carlile.
Yeah,
Explain
that's right.
explain this for us.
Well, when I met the twins, they were just radiant,
Mhm.
like they are, they're so beautiful and so talented and just like God, they're just the best dudes, and they're identical, like,
Yeah,
you cannot tell
it's
these guys
nuts.
apart,
It's nuts.
and it just was so cool. I've always just been in love with them, and it was one of these things in life, and there's only been a few of them for me where it's like, I just had to be with them. I just had to. There was no other way. Like, if they didn't like me or they didn't wanna work with me, I was just going to die, and
Yeah.
that's how I felt I was gonna cease to exist,
Yeah.
and, I was just scheming ways to try to make them be in my band, and they were older than me, and they were cooler than me, but I had been acquiring quite a following around Seattle, and there was a lot of buzz about why all these people were coming to my shows.
Mhm.
And the reason why is a whole other conversation. And I love talking about the music business. We could talk about this all day, but the reason why was because one of my schemes was working.
Yeah.
And um, I had all these beat up piece of shit guitars, like 14 of them, I think was the number.
Yeah.
Some of them didn't have headstocks on them, no strings. I used to tell people I was a luthier and stuff and like say I could fix guitars. I couldn't do it. I didn't know. Um, and I threw all these things in the back of my pickup truck, 1993 Toyota SR5 lifted black pickup truck. And I
Yeah,
drove down to
the
Trading
lift kit
Museum.
really takes it over the top,
Well,
Brandi.
it's
The
really
lift
important if you want to, you know, to appear tough, you have to have this lift kit. So I took them down to the Trading Musician and I sold them all for 2 Shure Beta 87 microphones
Mhm.
and an EBO, which is a little guitar, tricky little guitar centery tool thing, very Radiohead. And and I gave the twins each one microphone, and I gave Tim an EBO. And I was like, I want you guys to be in a band with me. And I mean it,
Yeah.
like in a band. It's everything's equal. And we will make it. If you decide to do this, and I decide to do this, and we decide to do this together, nothing will stop us. We are going to be
Mhm.
enormous rock stars. We're going to play Madison Square Garden. And I just promised. And then we talked about having a band name. I think I wanted a band name more than they did. I think they just, I don't want to say felt sorry for me, but like they had day jobs. They were making money. I was so clearly broke as a joke and in and out of pawn shops all the time and getting payday loans and crap. And like we'd play these gigs at restaurants and I'd pay them at the end of the night because it made me feel like I was offering something to them, and then they would sneak the money back into my guitar case or my
Yeah.
truck or whatever. And I don't think they thought to themselves, well, we don't want to call this band this girl's name. We deserve some, equity in this thing. So they were like, no, Brandi Carlile's fine.
Yeah.
And we don't want to confuse the people that are coming to these shows by
Mhm.
changing our name. So we got a record deal, and I was like, still Brandi Carlile, guys? And they were like, yeah, it was great. And then the record deal comes back and it says like Brandi Carlile is now a name for all three of us. And I
Yeah.
was like, I signed. I would
Yeah.
sign it again in a heartbeat. We're
Yeah.
equal. We split everything 3 ways. And even if I go off and write a song with Tanya or Miranda Lambert, that whatever my share of that song is goes me, Tim, and Phil. We split that
Yeah.
evenly. We're even Steven. And one thing that I've noticed is that when you do it that way, your friendship wins. You don't ever want to have something more than your buddy,
Mhm.
especially when you live next door to each other like we do. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Um, and B, the music wins. It's like nobody adds anything to a song that a song doesn't need
Mhm.
because nobody's worried about credit or
Yeah.
money. And you always just wind up making the best decision for the song. And everyone has to find a way to agree. We don't compromise.
And so then we have the debut. So the debut album, Brandi Carlile, self-titled, and then the story. I want to ask a little bit more about the batch of songs that are on those two records because
Yeah.
you had a deal with Rick Rubin with American Recordings that was kind of in limbo for a year.
Yeah.
I can't imagine just be like you're so driven, like you said, you're moving forward. It must have been really tough to just sit in limbo for a year there.
It was so it was so hard, and lucky for me, I was so used to being poor, and I didn't even wanna not be poor. In fact,
Hmm.
I always thought to myself, "Well, whenever I become rich and famous," which I definitely will,
Hmm.
I don't ever want to, like, forget what it feels like to walk in the store and see the thing you want is half off, you know what I mean? Or,
Hmm.
like, to get that feeling, and because 'cause I've always valued not money, I'm ridiculous and not smart with money, but I've
Me too.
always
Me too.
valued that feeling of being connected to not having it.
Hmm.
It's, it's something I will never allow myself to
Hmm.
lose it or to have so much that I do lose it. But I just remember that time being really hard because we had
Hmm.
nothing and we couldn't, pay the rent and we couldn't tour. We couldn't afford the gas for the van, you know?
Hmm.
And we got to a point where we were waiting for this record deal to come in, like, we needed to buy a guitar, we only have
Yeah.
1 working guitar between the 2 of us. We were having to, like, capo this thing up on the 6th or 7th fret if we wanted to use this 2nd guitar kinda thing, and what we wanted to do was get a record deal so we could
Yeah.
walk into a music store and buy guitars.
Yeah.
And it just didn't come, and it didn't come, and it didn't come, and at one point, I remember calling Rick Rubin and being like, I didn't say we're broke because I was always embarrassed for anyone to know that,
Hmm.
but I said, like, "We need to make money."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, record half the songs you got then, and here are the ones I think are you really need to save, and here are
Hmm.
the ones that I think you can use to sell at your shows and make a little extra money." And the ones that he told me to record to make a little extra money became the self-titled album, Brandi Carlile, and the ones that he
Hmm.
told me not to record became The Story.
Yeah. This is something that I did not understand. I didn't know until I read the book that you, I mean, what a luxury that you had. You didn't have to worry about writing a second record. You already
Yeah.
had songs like The Story and Shadow on the Wall, which I cannot get out of my head. Um, you already had those uh, in waiting, but you said, did you
Mhm.
make any changes to the first album, Brandi Carlile, or add songs, or it was just the songs that he felt were the B-sides?
It was the songs I felt were B-sides. One of them on there is even the actual 4-track demo from our rehearsal space, like a
Yeah,
4-track, like an
yeah.
actual 4-track demo is a tragedy, and it sounds like it. It sounds like shit. Um, and then I think when Brandi Carlile started getting licensed and played in, like, Grey's Anatomy, and it got
Mhm,
put all over TV and stuff, and things started kinda happening to it that no one expected, believe me. Um Then the record label was like, "Let's re-release this with some new things on it," and
okay.
kinda gave it a second wind, but no, it became an album and not a demo anymore.
You were signed to Columbia at this point.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, for you, were you just like, okay, like, how did it feel knowing that you have this second album ready to go that's got these your bangers on it, basically?
Yeah.
You
It it
know?
it felt good. I felt like I was sitting with a royal flush in my
Yeah,
hand all the
yeah.
whole time, and I did, and I was cocky about it too. And I remember feeling really cocky about it, like, they don't even know about the story yet, you know? And and we didn't write any new songs for it. It was just that collection of, like, our A-list songs, and and it saved us. I think it saved us because I see all these young people, these young artists at the time even, they would put out this first album that took them their whole lives to write, and it's
Mhm,
about love and loss, coming of age, coming out of the closet,
mhm.
these soirees into politics and social justice, like huge things,
Yeah,
weighty subjects. And then their second album's all about being on the road,
yeah.
and no one cares. It's like because most people can't relate to it, and it's also very grandiose and
Mhm.
self-involved and kind of pedestrian.
The
So
sophomore slump, the sophomore slump. I mean, yeah, I've never seen an artist do this, but it's brilliant. It's, the
accident.
sto yeah, well,
It was an accident.
the story, wait, did Phil or Tim write that one?
Phil.
Okay.
Phil.
That song has taken on such a global life. Like, it's really like, you see it performed so much, and the thing about the story is when you recorded it, you were what, 20, 24, 25, maybe?
Maybe even less.
So that opening line, all these lines across my face tell you the story of who I am. Um, it reminds me a little bit of, okay, so I'm going to make a comparison here.
If you say go ahead.
No, no, what do you know what I'm going to say?
I think I do, but go ahead.
You commented on it the other day online. Okay,
About
but anyway, let me just go ahead. Okay, it's fine. Even if you do guess, I think we're like connected. Like, our brains are connected. It reminds me of Joni Mitchell being
both
young and
sides
singing Both
now.
Sides Now.
Yeah.
And, and being and just, I mean, it was great, but then the version that she put out in 2000,
Oh,
with the strings on the Both Sides Now album, where she's been smoking, her voice is like rose and flows of angel hair. It's so like,
and then she goes, "And ice cream castle," and everything's so
yeah,
late. She's, like, not waiting. She's like,
I know.
oh, it's just amazing. It's like
Yeah,
that is the definitive performance of that song. That was it. Put that
yeah,
song to bed. That's the performance that has
yeah.
made that song what it is, to me anyway. It's unbelievable, and let me
But
tell you something else about that. I
okay,
didn't
tell
know
me,
you were
girl.
gonna say that, and I have thought about this before, and
Yeah,
actually, I wrote the album notes to Joni's next release that's coming out in her archives, and I mentioned this in those, that
yeah.
I know what you mean by that, and then I went and saw Joni recently
I'm
because
gonna cry. I'm just gonna cry.
and I don't know why, but she played it for me, that performance, and she put it
Yeah,
on the record player, and we sat in the living room across from each other, and we listened to it, and she closed her eyes, and she swayed, and she was so proud of it.
yeah,
And I thought to myself, like, that was always her. She had always looked at life from both sides now, and love and clouds. And I mean, we didn't see it yet, but
yeah,
it was there.
yeah. I just, you've lived, and that's the thing though, you've lived a lot of life. Like, your life growing up was not, you'd seen a lot by the time that you sang the story, even though you were only 25. I think that the parallel that I draw is hearing Dolly sing it on the Ward Child project. It was kind of like, I know that someday you will sing that song and have all the, like, I've seen, but having Dolly sing it was really,
I mean, I know.
yeah, it was. Did it change for you when you heard Dolly sing it?
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely did. Although I think she actually has less lines than I do, on her face,
Well,
but
yeah,
it
that's the thing. I said I did write my notes. If Dolly had lines, she
I know,
doesn't.
exactly.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, and she does it. Um, but no, yeah, God, when I heard Dolly sing that the first
yeah,
time, I was stunned. I thought that would be the greatest thing at that point in my life that had ever happened to me. I thought that was it. Like, that was the top right there.
yeah,
Dolly sang the story.
yeah,
And yeah, she brought it to life. It became, well, like it became a Dolly song,
yeah.
you know?
That's another thing. I'm gonna do this on an Apple Music show at some point. But Dolly is a cover artist. Like, you can just go through Dolly's catalog of her cover songs, like her bluegrass version of "Help," or her version of Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah,
She just takes them in and they just become her. It's who
yeah.
she is. It's amazing.
So I want to talk about making the album, the story with T-Bone Burnett. And
Mm.
so, as we said, you were in your mid-20s, and T-Bone, had just, he won Album of the Year for "A Brother Where Art Thou," but he's an icon. And you write very honestly in the book about what it was like for you to go in and stand your ground, um,
Yeah.
for your artistry and yourself, and also about, um, just some of T-Bone's approaches, and y'all have made up. But I do think this is very helpful for artists to kind of grapple with, in
Mhm.
that, when you go into a studio and you have your vision and you have what you want to do, and then you get pushback from a producer.
Yeah.
um yeah, tell us about that. That it was hard. It was a hard experience for you.
It was both hard and really beautiful and
Mhm,
illuminating. It was
mhm,
all of the things. There were really funny days and really funny
mhm,
times, and then in post, we started to have pretty significant disagreements, and, they were mostly about my voice and kind of at the time, the way it was finding itself. You can't accelerate that. You can't, yank somebody out of their youth because you see the potential in the future and they don't
mhm,
yet. And so it's funny because now, here I am 40 years old. I know what the thing was that he didn't like,
mhm,
and I've toned it down, you know, 30 or 40%. But it's it's this thing where even when you see affectation as a
mhm,
producer, you can mention it actually. You can sort of point to it and call it out.
mhm,
But unless the person sheds it naturally,
mhm,
an unnatural shedding of affectation is indeed an
mhm.
affectation,
Yeah.
you know? And, it became really hard for me because I really loved my voice and myself, and
Mhm,
I've always been very punk rock, um, about, not taking any shit, and, I needed to see my vision through, and in the end, I did, and
mhm,
I think that T-Bone and I are better friends for it.
mhm.
You know, and he's a dad to really strong, incredible daughters,
Yeah,
you know, and he's married a complete powerhouse of a woman too.
yeah.
It's like he's surrounded himself with women that are like, "Okay, I hear what you're saying. I know you're a genius, and also still no."
Mhm.
And he's okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, that came out of that was that you do you think you became, I'm trying to think how to say it, not you became cautious about using your voice in the studio after that.
Yeah.
You That, and that really it makes me understand why, the By the Way I Forgive You album was such a revelation to me,
Mm.
because you were able to, um, come back to feeling free to use your voice. But what did that make you, that experience, was it conscious that you did it, that you were just gonna be like, you say in the book that if you want the full, I'm just gonna cut loose in my shows, but in on the albums,
You have to
that's
buy
for
a
the
ticket.
shows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to come see it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I did what I do a lot, which is kinda hold my space outside and then get, a little shaky inside.
Mhm.
And, I can remember that moment in the story so that moment in the story where my voice breaks and in that scream at the end, that's
Mhm.
like people love
Mhm.
that, it's a
Yeah.
big part it's become such a part of my life, that moment in the story, but
Mhm.
when it happened in the studio, I was really upset, and not that it had happened, but it happened
Mhm.
because I was upset,
Yeah.
and, I wanted to play my guitar, and I didn't get to, and I wasn't brave enough to say that I wanted to, so I get through this part, and I hit this thing in my voice, and I'm like, "Oh, great, I've destroyed the take," and I almost, like, start nervous laughing to stop the take, but I see it through, and instead of coming through the speaker and going, "All right, let's get it again, you messed up that thing vocally," T-Bone's like, "Come in here, you have to hear this." And I got up and I went into the control room and he played me this and he's like, "This moment will always be one of the most important moments in your career is this
Yeah.
this break in your voice."
Yeah.
And I had started to struggle. And then in post, which is really in post where
Mhm.
T-Bone and I started having friction and disagreements about my voice and what it should be doing and what it shouldn't be doing. Um, I grew self-conscious about it, and then the record label and my manager at the time tried to get me to, re-record it and take that spot out. They didn't like it. They thought it was too rugged, and then I had to fight for it even though I felt self-conscious about it because it was
Yeah,
real and it happened, and I don't wanna lie to people, and I was, like, really punk rock and
yeah,
silly. But I kept that moment, and, um and then I kind of was like, "But never again." Like, I'll do this live, but in the studio, I do the studio thing, and I get myself back on the road.
yeah.
And that was just some weird repressive one on the Enneagram decision I made to, like, not sing like a banshee in the studio, until By the Way I Forgive You.
Yeah, I mean, Brandi, I gotta say, I didn't know that you sang like that really until I went to see you, when By the Way I Forgive You came out. There was a little show at, Basement East, and my
Mhm.
friend Joseph Connor, he's my best friend in the whole world, and he has seen you more times than he's seen Lady Gaga, so that means a lot. He was always
Lovely.
like yeah. So, but Joseph, I just wanna give a shout out to Joseph Connor. But, that was the thing, seeing that, I had no idea, and the music business person in me would say, "Girl, you weren't advertising what you do," like, if you
I
look
know.
at the album as the advertisement for the show,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So, let's move on because we're running out of time, and I hate that we are because I could just dissect this book for the rest of my life, probably will, but, with By the Way I Forgive You, you worked with Dave Cobb and came to Nashville, and Shooter
Yep.
Jennings as well,
Mhm.
and um, before that, when you were doing By the Way I Forgive You, you write about, of course, you're a Gemini, as I am, and when I saw that on the birth certificate, Evangeline's birth certificate, I was like, "Where's it gonna come up that she's 2 people?" And then there it was.
Do you know how hard it is for me not to turn this around on you and ask you questions? I wanna turn so many things around on you because I wanna know how you're 2 people. I want you to explain it to me, but
100%, 100%. I will say I've been sober 5 years next week,
oh,
which
good
is a
for you,
big
buddy.
which is a big way of integration. Yeah,
Mm.
because there was Nice Hunter that you see here, and there was I'm go my drag queen name was Vendetta, I'll put it that way. Yeah.
I'm so glad you're sober, but I'm a little sad I didn't get to meet Vendetta.
Oh, yeah, he comes out at Lipstick Lounge, so next time we're there. But,
Okay.
you talk about really this process is fascinating. It really is a integration that you did. You have basically it's like, your love for Elton, the Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy basically both exist in you. There's the showgirl, and then there's I'm gonna be on my farm doing that. So tell me about that process of and what part of yourself was able to come through, and By the Way I Forgive You, because you integrated those 2 parts of yourself, do you think?
Well, I think that the great integrator of those 2 parts of me is, Catherine. She's the one that saw both things and was
Yeah.
like, "You need to be your whole self more
Mhm,
often. You don't have to go here and be her and then be here and be her." And furthermore, I love both of you that live in that head of yours, but, like, I prefer the one that's a little more connected to the
mhm,
earth. And she basically pulled me, like, out of my head,
mhm,
She wouldn't let me take sleep aids anymore to go to sleep, and she wouldn't let me, push through and do my shows like a crazy, you know, cracked out little monkey on steroids every time I got a sore throat. And she liked me in the morning without any makeup on, just like being like frumpy and walking around in like Hunter Wellies and
mhm,
covered in dirt, and she liked that about me. I'll never forget the first little like letter that she sent me. This is interesting because this is just another thing. When you talk to people like I'm talking to you, things come up that you don't
mhm.
you don't remember, but you have that about you. So
Thank you.
I remember, like, getting my very first little letter, like, from Catherine or email, and the subject line was, "I wanna talk to the girl who saves horses." And it was basically, we had a lot of conversations about charity and Paul McCartney and, how to run a 501(c)(3),
Mhm.
and somehow we had diverged into this other space where I told her about my horse. And, I think she, like, made this decision. She's like, "I think I like that you. I like that you, the horse you."
Mhm.
And, that's what that email said, and then she's just kind of lived that, like, every day. She's pulled that girl onto the stage, she's pulled that girl into the tour bus, and she's just basically started to kind of reconcile those 2 people for me, and
Mhm.
they've opposed a lot in my life.
Mhm.
And now I really feel, I guess, integrated. I really do,
Yeah.
you know? It's like I told you, I was an outdoor emporium, and all I wanted people to know was that I had the number 1 New York Times bestseller today, which means that these women, they're aware of each other now,
Yeah.
and I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is an interesting thing to, like, to do what you do, you have to have this, like, larger than life side of you, I think that comes up a lot, like Beyonce talking about Sasha Fierce, like, that being a totally different persona. It's just beautiful to see you integrate them, and the result is, let's talk about the joke, because cannot I'm just gonna say it, this was a cornerstone of my Trump therapy playlist. I basically had
Well,
to
somebody
have
listening, please put that on a T-shirt. Thank you.
yeah, it was a mix of, like, Nina Simone protest
Oh,
songs and then
yeah.
CeCe Winans gospel songs, or, like, Neil Young's Living with War album, but the joke, just such a beautiful song. And I think I'd love for you to talk, as a producer yourself, about what Dave Cobb did. You write that he wasn't really interested in being a therapist. He was there to make a classic album.
Yeah,
And
that's still true.
yeah, and what did he tell you about about the story that you
Well,
needed to do?
he's very bull in a china shop communicator. He's very flippant. He's kinda cowboy. And it's like, so he doesn't think like, well, these are things that hurt artists' feelings, and these are things that, and I remember sitting around at the end of that record, really feeling like we had made our best album, like, that it was revolutionary, at least for us. I felt like it
Mhm.
was live. I felt like it was like a show. And we
Yeah.
record all our records live, but it's the thing I was telling you about where I was singing different. And and then he says this, like, hard thing, which is like, acted like it just occurred to him when it so obviously hadn't. And he's like, actually what comes to mind that you haven't done on this album is, like, you haven't done it since, is a vocal moment, like, as good as the story. Like, you haven't done anything as good as the story since the story. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, what have we been doing for the last month then? Because to me, all feels better than the story.
Yeah.
And I was like trying not to be frustrated, but I knew that however frustrated I was feeling, the twins were going to be way worse. And they're such reptilian, like, sociopath, that I was like, well, they'll never show him, but they're going to bitch all the way home, after this and stuff. And that I knew that had annoyed them to, like, no end. And so I'm mediating and stuff, but I didn't let any of my feelings out about it, and I kinda shut Dave down, and I went home that night and got in bed with Catherine. I'm like, "You're not gonna believe freaking Gob said to us tonight." Like, he was like, "You haven't done anything as good as the story," you know? And Catherine's like, "Huh, that's interesting." And I was like, "Well, obviously you're offended, right?" Because I'm just, like, offended, and it's not true. And so it's like, click, she turns off the light and rolls over, and I'm just like laying there, and lyrics are coming to mind because I already know I'm gonna write it.
Mhm.
And she goes, "If you're honest with yourself, Brandi, have you had a moment as good as the story since the story?" And I was like, "Shit, no." No, not vocally. Um, and it was intentional. I didn't want to. And then the next morning I woke up and I went in and I wrote the joke and recorded the joke in the same day,
Mhm.
and it was just
Yeah.
there. The song was just there.
And I have to thank you for that. I'm so glad that you got to that point
I'm always
because
gonna think of you now when I sing that first verse.
well, thank you. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I might cry. I always want, they would be like, Hunter, go out and play with the boys. They want, they need you. It's like, no, I want to stay in here and see how you've redecorated your house, Aunt Judy.
I bet you were so loved. I mean, by those gals, I would have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I look back now and like my mom was a fourth grade teacher, and all the women, there were the other school teachers, and then her best friends were her cousins owned a bridal shop in Coleman, Alabama.
Mhm.
So that's where like my 11th
I've
birthday,
been
no lie, I was like, I want to go hang out with my 30, 40-year-old cousins at the bridal shop. I now realize my life was like one long designing women and Still Magnolias episode. Or
and why not? And
and
why not?
I'm so blessed. I'm so
And now
blessed
look
by
at you.
look at you in your Judge shirt and your Carhartt hat. Oh, but I gotta say about going back to the joke though, the therapy that just you letting out and releasing, it was so cathartic for me to be able to hear. Um, and if we pay attention, the fight for equality and for everything I think it's just moved to the state houses at this point. Just before we started this, the I got a push notification that the same transgender ban on transgender kids in sports passed here in Tennessee. It passed in Florida, and it just passed in my home state of Alabama. So it's just, I think it's still going on. But in those moments, that catharsis that comes out of you, it's just it's a prayer and a promise of
It's a promise, yeah.
yeah that there's going to be all will be made right somewhere down the road. So
It has to be, and it
yeah,
will. It will one way or the other in our
yeah,
lifetime or in
mhm,
not in our lifetime, but as Emily said, she was inaccurate about the timeline, at least for now, but,
yeah.
that we're not working for our lifetime. We're working for the next one.
Okay. So I have held off long enough. I'm now just ready to talk Joni. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I should do. I was like, but this is Music Talks with Hunter Kelly, so we're going to talk about Joni. I I mean, the story of how you came to know Joni through Catherine with Little
Yeah,
Green, and the role that she played in you understanding tough femininity, is
yeah.
fascinating. But I just want to go move that conversation forward a little bit because one of the things I've seen in you with your work with Tanya Tucker, and now being around Joni,
Mhm.
I grew up like watching Johnny Cash do the American recordings with Rick Rubin in his
Yeah,
renaissance, and I know that you've talked with Rick about that. I
yeah.
have a poster on my wall to this day of Emmylou Harris's album Wrecking Ball from
Mm,
'95, where she worked with Daniel Lanois, and it changed the trajectory of her career.
yeah.
And so, for me, the latter years of an artist's career are so fascinating to me, which
They
is why I'm
are.
so excited that you're healthy and just 40 because you've got a lot of years left. Um, but Joni Mitchell is I started getting into her in college. So this was
Uh-huh.
like 20 something years ago. And even just last year I had a breakthrough with Hijira, the album.
Oh, that's my favorite, actually. It's
Yeah.
weird, I think Blue's the best album ever made, but my favorite is actually Hijira.
Yeah, it's crazy because I got the first 2 songs, Coyote and Amelia, I got right
Mm,
after college, and those were like anthems, but the rest of the album, Joni has so much, and she's so creative and so I believe you said it in your talk with Tara Westover, untethered, or she's untethered,
Unlocked. She's unlocked.
unlocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even last year, I mean, I text with Ann Powers whenever I have my breakthroughs about Joni, and I was like, Hijira. Um,
Yeah.
so I just I
Did you
wanna
know
talk.
Ajira is Joni's favorite of her albums too?
It
She
is?
told me. I asked her. I asked her actually a couple weeks ago.
Oh my god.
Yeah. She goes, "I don't know. I think maybe Ajira." And I was
Yeah.
like, you know how many people would love to know that?
Yeah, and you just revealed it.
Yeah.
I just the stuff in this book, we're not gonna get to all of it, but the stuff in Broken Horses that you write about Joni and your relationship with Joni is just it's fascinating to me, but it's also so inspiring because um I feel like, she's so vital. And I just wonder like what you've seen since you started going over there about her interest in music. It seems
Mhm.
like she's interested because I know for a long time she didn't really want to interact with her music.
Yeah.
There's an interview probably about 7 years ago where she was like, I don't listen to my music.
Mm.
So I'm just curious
She does
what.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what have you seen? Because you've been there for all of it.
She is so, like, she's light. I
Mhm.
think people understand Joni differently than she actually walks through the world now.
Mhm.
She loves her old music and old self now a lot. She
Good.
loves, like, and has space in her heart for her folk part of her career,
Mhm.
and she has, respect and affection for the Joni that wrote Blue and Ladies of the Canyon and
Mhm.
Clouds, and she has observations about that time too, but they're so, out of body in a very interesting way, like, she doesn't judge herself, and she doesn't really judge other people either. And now she does listen to her music because she's very involved in these archives. This is not
Yeah.
these archives that she's putting out. This is not being done by management or friends or colleagues. This is like Joni is sitting at her kitchen table with piles of vinyl and tape. And and I go over there to have a glass of wine and she's playing me coffee house recordings and
Yeah.
going, listen to this line, listen to this line, it's a real thing. And it's very exciting to engage with Joni about music and watch her be excited about music and watch her love her own music too. Like I told
Yeah.
you, she played Both Sides Now for me last week. And I also have watched her reemerge into singing. And it's just for fun and it's just for the love of it and for the community of being with her friends in that sacred living room in that
Mhm.
sacred space. But God, it's like it's inspiring doesn't actually
Yeah.
quantify it. I'll never be the same artist because of my relationship with Joni for the past couple of years.
Yeah, I love what you said too about, when she first asked you over, to the house that you were trying not to shake.
Yeah.
Um, I get that. I just, you write about, I love this line when you were talking about when you were doing the entire album, the Blue album, live in front of Joni and Elton John and Bonnie Raitt, and you had to tell the crazy little lesbian to stay home, so
It's
you
like,
could show
"Sit down."
up, sit
Yeah.
down. Yeah, you're like
"Sit
taking
down.
your
It's
childhood
not your
self and you're
moment,
realizing
girl."
you have to show up. But it's something very real. I experienced I experienced it after I interviewed Reba McEntire about the Judds.
Oh
I
my
s
god.
For this project, I spent 30 minutes with Reba McEntire talking about the Judds. And that's like, you know, after I left, I was literally there's a management office next to Reba's and I was vibrating. I was like vibrating. I know, but
Your
so
blood was buzzing. I know exactly what you
you know
mean.
what
It's
I'm
like your
yeah.
blood buzzes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you so I'm wondering, like, when you put your little self away, but when you're able to be by yourself after one of those big times, how do you feel? Like after the Blue concert, for example, when you're able to start processing it.
Well, when I went backstage and Elton came back, it was like and he gave me that hug, and there's, like, photographic evidence of this hug, actually, it's in the book, and he gives me this hug, and it was like I don't know, I just felt like my life flashed before my eyes. You read the
Yeah.
book, like, you can't really zoom in on it, but, like, in the end here, there's these pictures of me interacting with Elton and Joni at this show. And he's so look at the ones where he's holding my arms and I'm holding his. This was the music was still playing. I had walked up to the row that he was sitting in to give flowers to Joni, and he stood up and he grabbed me and he goes, "You did it."
Mm-hmm.
And I know he meant that show,
mm-hmm.
but I took it to mean a lot more.
Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just how I felt. Like I felt like I had done it, and not just the show.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm sitting here, you know, locked arms with a guy that I used to lay in bed 11 years old and pray to God that I'd be allowed to meet him in heaven. You know, saying you did it.
Yeah.
I wish that on everyone. I wish that kind of affirmation, like on everyone.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what's weird? You know, sometimes I think about with Winona how sometimes her eyes really look like Elvis, or she has the lip snarl.
Oh yeah.
You and Elton both have the same gap in your teeth. It's like a family thing, even though it's not.
There's the gap in my teeth, and there's the fact that like I used to have a symmetrical smile before I noticed that Elton only smiles out of one side of his mouth when I was like 12, and now I have a freaking line that I don't even want because I spent like my teenage years trying to smile like Elton John. What kind of like teenager in the 90s wants to just look like Elton John?
Hey, Liz, I was right there with you. I saw him in 97 after Diana died. We were in the 22nd row, Brandi.
Oh.
It was like Candle in the Wind.
In the 22nd row.
Oh my God. I forgot to tell people how to ask questions. So I'm going to do that right now. Go ahead.
Just me and you right now is what's happening.
Hey y'all. So there's a whole audience out there, I guess.
Right.
So y'all go ahead and ask questions in the chat. And while that happens, I have like 3 random things from the book that I want to ask while we're waiting for the
okay.
So go ahead and ask those questions in the chat, because I know we have some journalist friends. Some of my journalist friends are here, and I told them to have questions ready. So hi,
journalist friends.
Okay, just one. This is just really random shit from the book I had to get out. You get called bitch 3 times in the book, and it's amazing. The first one is Tanya Tucker, you're on a text chain with her and Shooter Jennings. And I guess Tanya didn't know that you were on the text chain. And what did she reply?
She didn't understand. She still doesn't understand.
What did Tanya reply?
She says, you know, Shooter sends this thing about this girl, Brandi. She's, you know, really big fan, and she wants to help me produce the record, and she's really talented, T, and blah, blah. And, you know, Tanya responds back, and she said, "Who the hell's this Brandi bitch? Who's the hell's this Brandi bitch?" She says, "Who's the hell?" or something like that. And I had responded to Shooter this like long overwrought emoji ridden, just like, Tanya, I'm a really big fan. Saying Delta Dawn since I was 8. And she's like, "Who's this Brandi bitch?" And yeah, but I loved it.
And then I'll just say this real quick because we have questions coming in. Shaka Khan, you're over at Joni's house hanging, and Shaka Khan and Herbie Hancock come in, whatevs. And Shaka says, I guess she asked for your wine, or she's like, "Bitch, you're not drinking that." She took it. "Bitch, give me that wine."
She goes, "Bitch, you're not drinking that thing." Took my wine glass, poured it in her own wine glass. It gave me back the empty glass and was like, I was like, okay, well, now I've lived because Shaka Khan called me a bitch and took my booze.
And then Elton, when he found out that you were singing Joni's Blue in front of Joni in the original keys with no teleprompter, called you crazy bitch.
You crazy bitch. Use a teleprompter, he says.
To get called a bitch by Elton John, because the bitch is back. Like our one of our Dotson's River, her theme song is "The Bitch is Back" because she just owns the room. So, I mean, to be called that by Elton, yeah, I love that word too. Joseph Connor, who I mentioned earlier, we have entire conversations using nothing but that word.
I get so much shit for it on social media. I'll be like, bitch, and I get it. I get where you're not supposed to use that word. I get it. It's just, I think it's just like my age, people my age, like we use it to take the power back and use it
Yeah.
in a way that we love, we feel empowered by. I love that
Yeah.
word.
So I have so much love in that word when I say it to my friends. Okay, we got a lot of questions.
Oh my
Let's
goodness, yeah.
start off with Robert Adam, who is a queer artist we're playing on Proud Radio out of Canada.
Oh, cool.
And he wants to know, what is your advice to up and coming queer artists who want to not get stuck in the archetypes and carve out their own identity? And this is something too that I've run across in country music. Is there's artists who'll come out and then they'll say, we don't want the gay thing to be right up front. We don't want that to be the only thing of conversation, or have them pigeonholed as the gay country singer or the gay singer. And for me, I just part of me, I guess, understands, and part of me is like, I think maybe in a few months, when you see the impact that you have and you're more comfortable in this identity, that I have a feeling you'll change your tune. But I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can't really relate to that. I think do a total 180, go find other queer people, get in a big queer
Mm-hmm.
people group, get together shoulder to shoulder and do a big queer people push
Mm-hmm.
and own it, make it the thing, have it right on your sleeve. And if your art is brilliant and good, it'll speak for itself,
Yeah.
and you can help queer people.
Oh, I think this is a great time to promote myself, Brandi. So with Proud Radio and Apple Music Country, we actually just launched the playlist on Apple Music. It's 50 songs, and it's going to change with every episode, but it's a showcase. It's a place to go to discover these queer artists in country and Americana. And
I love it.
you're on it like twice, I think. I know if she ever leaves me, is on there. So
Yeah, that sounds queer AF.
yeah, thank God. So I think, yeah, that's great advice. Is there any, you can see these questions too, right?
Uh-uh.
I'll just ask.
Yeah.
Okay. Kelly Knox wants to know if By the Way I Forgive You is about forgiveness. What is the new album you just recorded about?
Hi, Kelly. The new album is going to be named after Vendetta. It's going to be the opposite of forgiveness. No, the new album is actually totally inspired by the book, the mining of our memories and our foundations, and bringing up unsettling truths. And the new album was really about drama. There's a lot of drama. It's over the top. I think I've spent decades trying to keep a lid on a certain level of vocal and emotional drama for myself, and it's just off. It's just
Yeah.
fully like leaning into Whitney and Celine and just owning it, floor to ceiling.
Are you serious?
Dead serious, total drama.
Because Brandi, I think one of the things I was like, when are you going to throw us gays some dance mixes?
I have always wanted to do a dance remix of The Joke.
Yeah.
That big mid-tempo banger thing.
Mm-hmm.
That could be really cool. But no, I would love to do some dance remixes sometime. You let me know if you got anybody in mind.
Well, I did start working with Logic during quarantine, and I've made some bangers, but they're under an assumed name on SoundCloud.
Vendetta. I
Maybe.
produced an album that's going to have some pretty baller dance moments on it by the band Lucius.
Okay.
Lucius.
Okay.
It's very exciting album. You're going to freak out when you hear it. It's like twin Sinead O'Connor's fronting Erasure. You're welcome.
Thank you. I was wondering, that's another thing too. I'm wondering, one of the things is I wonder when you're going to get into have an album with like some synth pads or something.
There's some stuff like that on this album.
Okay. Breaking news. You heard it here first. Okay. Let's see. People want to know more about Joni. They want to know a little bit more about the archives. How involved are you? And also, seeing Joni, I think, every time you turn around, there's another Bob Dylan archive. There's another Neil Young archive. Joni deserves this treatment.
She does deserve this treatment. And the really exciting thing about it is she won't ever take credit, but she's doing it.
Yeah.
Like she is. And she's I mean, I don't know how much I can give away about them, but I know some secrets about them
Okay.
that are
Oh my God.
just explosive. Like, if you have read, I'm just saying, if
Yeah.
you my wife's standing, she's like, I have a huge mouth, but I'm just saying, if you know things about Joni and you know things about her past and you've read, any of these books that have been written about her, which I don't know if she likes any of them or whatever, but I read them because I'm psychotic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, basically, there are things that have been hidden away from the past that we don't know where they are, and they've been found and reemployed in some of these archives and some of this
Okay.
stuff. And that's what's really exciting about it. And she's really excited about it too. So I think if anybody is like sitting at home thinking, well, these archives are happening in the administration around Joni
Mhm.
Mitchell. No, they're not. They're happening in Joni's kitchen.
Good. I'm so glad for her to be creative in that way.
Yeah.
Um, Also, do you think you'll do the Blue show, Blue performance again? Please, God, please.
Mhm. One more
Okay.
time.
Okay.
And we have a date and we have a thing and everything, but I can't announce it yet until we know what
Okay.
more is going on with
Okay.
COVID and how that's gonna affect touring.
Okay. Well, okay, that's a trip I need to plan. Zach
Might not
Hunt,
be that trip, I'm just gonna say for you.
thank you. Well, parking in Nashville is so expensive. Reemerging in Nashville, oh my God, after I got fully vaxxed, started going back to restaurants, and it's like, wow, Nashville's expensive.
I know.
My buddy Zach Hunt out of New Orleans wants to know what artists that you grew up listening to have you not worked with yet? That anybody on your radar? Please, I can make that happen. Or you have her number. Yeah,
Yeah, the
when we
Judds, man.
when we stand together, it's our finest hour.
We can do anything,
Anything,
anything.
anything.
Keep believing in the power.
Yes, seriously. Okay, you're my new ally on all things Judd. Let's see. Oh yeah, people are asking about "Stranger at My Door." What was the inspiration for your song "Stranger at My Door"?
A Stranger at My Door, it was right before Evangeline was born. Catherine
Mhm,
was pregnant with Evangeline when I wrote Stranger at My Door, and I remember standing around a bonfire like I always do, while we were building the addition onto our house for Evangeline's nursery. And I was caught up and reading about and grieving around the refugee crisis. Particularly, I'm talking about Syria. So I'm talking about the refugee camps that I'm learning about at the time in Iraq and Jordan, and I'm thinking about the relative safety that my child's about to be born into, and I'm thinking about it like in terms of like biblically,
mhm,
and it's kind of like a dark, twisted crossroads. But I was thinking about homophobia as well, and the passages in the Bible about Sodom and Gomorrah,
mhm,
and how those of us that have spent time meditating on those passages terrified
mhm,
that there's some cosmic punishment for homosexuality. The deeper we go into this story, the more we learn it's about inhospitability, and the fact that we are realizing that it's about people coming to a foreign place and being abused, mistreated, turned away. And so I came to that last verse, and I thought, I want to write something about how nothing scares me more than the stranger at my door who I fail to give shelter, time, and worth. And that we twist these things, we twist scriptures and politics to fit our agenda, you know, our better you than me mentality that I think
mhm.
that we sometimes tend to have. And I wanted to write a song before my daughter was born where I got some of that out of my head and into the world, where I could just sort of profess that all this dark thinking, all this imagery, all this scripture, nothing is worse than how we're willing to exclude these people.
Yeah.
And that's what The Stranger at My Door is about.
Yeah, I need a message. And
But a weird one, a twisted one.
yeah. Well, I mean, and that's another thing. Go read the book. Everybody here is getting a copy. I feel like Oprah right now. You're all getting a copy.
And
But
you
yeah,
get a copy,
I
and
mean,
you get a
I grew up in the church, and I learned things about that. There were two words that you pointed out that really, helped me dig deeper. Um, just to confirm what I already know, that God loves me and God made me as I am.
Mm.
Nate Lucina says, no question here, but just an FYI, a shared emotional response to your music has been a point of helping my mom and I understand my queerness, her reaction to it, how we connect and how we love. That's awesome. I know that
I
you had
love that.
those people for you.
Yeah, I love
That's
that. I
yeah.
get it.
Yeah. I mean, Brandy, I just thank you so much for all I'm proud to have you in my generation. I want to say, I I cannot wait to keep watching you and hopefully talking to you going forward. I mean, it's
I'm proud to have
so
you in my generation and in my week and my month, my
well.
fellow Gemini brother.
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
really, we need you. We
Thank
need
you.
you and the things that you're drawing attention to. And this
Thank
has been
you.
a really special interview for me.
Thank you. It has been for me too, and I just encourage everybody, spend some time with this book. There are two more loose ends from the book that I have to ask, and
Do.
they're not serious.
I think
And then we'll
I
bid everybody adieu. um, your feral cat Skitsy that you had from age 4 to 22, you write about.
Yeah.
Skitsy would come in, uh, crawl on your bed, bringing dead,
Mhm.
like I guess a mouse or a rat, and
Or
you just
bird.
had, yeah, and eat it on the bed after she'd licked your head.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, Skitsy. Um,
Skitsy.
yeah. My question is, you said that you had her from 4 to 22, but you moved like 14 times.
I know. How did we keep bringing her?
Did y'all bring her?
Yeah.
You brought her with you. Okay.
Every time.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, she was like she was my soul mate. Like,
Mhm.
and it was weird because I had her from so young that I
Mhm.
never felt like I would never felt like I was like this authority to her. She was like my
Yeah.
guardian. And she kind of still is.
Yeah.
I think she's a guardian angel in my life. Does that sound weird?
No, I totally like my dog's growing up and
Can I
Snoopy.
tell you why I think she's guardian angel?
Why?
This is gonna get really witchy for just a quick second, but,
It's
like,
fine. I love it.
first of all, I still dream about her all the time, and every time I see her, I'm like, "Oh my god, you must be so old. I can't believe you're still alive," and she comes to me in dreams. And then this one time we were, in the like, Tim and Phil are super psychic. It's creepy. I am not
Yeah.
psychic. But we were, like, in a, studio, and we were in the kitchen, we were cooking breakfast one day, and I looked up and I saw this blanket on the wall. And when Skitsy died, I gave her the euthanasia shot myself, and I had a stethoscope on. And I listened till her heart stopped beating. And when she died, I wrapped her in a blanket and put her in a box and took her back up on the hill where that first single wide trailer was that we lived in, and buried her up there. My dad buried her up there. And we were in this kitchen, and I looked up on the wall and I saw the same blanket. And I looked up at the blanket, and Tim was standing there making eggs with me. And I was like, I used to have a blanket like that. And his eyes go totally blank. And he looks at me and he goes, your cat's in it.
That's weird.
That's serious.
Well,
He's so
yeah, well, that's like in the book you write about like them having these dreams that they've had. Wait, did they have them? They both have them, or it's just dreams?
Oh, they
Yeah,
both do. I could tell you some about seeing ghosts and all. I mean, I could tell you some stories. One of these times, we're just going to have to hang out, and you can
yeah.
drink like a non-alcoholic beer or whatever, and I can have a real one, and we can talk about the twins and their their
Yeah.
witchiness, because it's so creepy. But yeah, that cat's like a guardian angel in my life still.
Well, I'm here for it. So I basically bought this. This is a new shirt. I just, as part of my reentry, I went back to the store and you can't really see it, but it's kind of like it feels Southwestern. I love Southwestern patterns. It reminds me of like Shirley MacLaine and her
Mm.
like UFO Southwestern kind of thing, like
Well, you're
Sedona
so
healing.
handsome.
Thank you.
And your glasses too. You're just very distinguished, very handsome.
These are readers. It's already started. I need reading glasses. Okay, final question, and it's totally not. It was just a loose point, but in the book, you say that your mom thought your dad was the Green River serial killer.
You're asking all the weird stuff. Yeah. Yeah, she did.
Yeah. Well, it was just kind of Brandy. It's just kind of stuff that just was like you write. It's really like you're having a conversation, and so I would
No,
have a
I'm like,
follow
"You
up
stayed
question.
living with him. Like, you stayed living with him." She almost called the task force. Yeah, because, like,
How did she say this? Like, how does your mom? And who did she say it to?
me. So I'm like 20, I was 23 when they finally caught him, and he was just a vile creature,
Yeah, yeah.
walking and destroyed, my childhood. And um, so I get the book Riverman, and I look and I was like, oh my God, that's like identical to my dad, you know,
Yeah.
this drawing of him in the 80s. And so I called my mom and we were just talking. I was like, God, this drawing of dad in the 80s is like, or of Green River Killer in the 80s, like identical to dad. And she goes, do you want to talk about this right now? It's like, what? She's like, I thought your father was like the Green River Killer. Let me tell you why. Because when they found his first like victims, it was like at my dad's fishing spot on the river in
Oh,
Buriam where we lived,
yeah.
like near Pack Highway, like the Peck Bridge. And then they come out with like a description of him that looks just like my dad. And then they say they draw like the truck, and it's like the same truck. And then they say this person is like a machinist or works in like an industrial. My dad's a machinist at Boeing. And then all goes away for a while. He's not prolific for a little while. Everything goes calm. And my mom sort of forgets about it. And then we move out to the country. I'm talking like an hour or more away from Burien. And then within a month of living there, guess where shows up the next Green River body?
Oh my God.
Maple Valley, like our town. And I'm like, my mother's still not totally sure that. So she told me, she told me that when she told that when I called her, she's like, I haven't even ever told your dad. I'm like, tell him. So she told him, and he was like, he said something sick, like, well, they say there could have been an accomplice, and he's just sort of left it hanging out there. But if you ever meet my dad, he's like not a friendly character. Like, he's a little scary.
Yeah. Well, basically, Brandy, I can't get enough murder shows. Like, so, and I don't know what it is. I just relax with Dateline.
I know. It's some of us need it. I don't know what it is either. I have the same thing, and my mom is like, she's a nightmare. Yeah. And just
Your
for
mom,
anybody that's
your mom,
watching, we're not laughing about serial killers. We know
no,
it's
not
really,
at
really
all.
bad.
No, but it's just, there's something,
We're just,
I don't know. Yeah. My mom and I will trade notes. She's like, did you see 2020 in Dateline? Oh, it was a good one. Well, yeah, it's even crazier when they're close to your house. Like there was one in our hometown, a Dateline in our hometown, and it was like I know the hamburger stand that they picked up food from before, So yeah, I
I
get
wonder
it.
what that is. I hope somebody does a study on that sometime, because I saw a Saturday Night Live skit about it recently
Oh
that
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
you see that?
Yeah, with Nick Jonas. He's a
Well,
smoke
where it's
show.
like all these women are basically admitting that, when their husband leaves and they get a day off to
Mhm.
themselves, that they turn on true crime and they watch true
Yeah,
crime. And but just
yeah,
knowing that, like, my mom thought my dad might be a serial killer for like significant amount of years is just says everything about
yeah.
how my childhood, how weird it was.
Brandy Carlisle, I have no doubt there's more books in you, just based on this, because here we are. I want to kind of keep it at 90 minutes, and
Maybe we write one together, you and me.
I'm down. Yeah, I did. Have you ever done The Artist's Way?
Mm-mm. Oh,
Julia
the book, The
Cameron?
Artist Way? Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
My
Have you
wife
done
has
it?
it. She's done it, and I haven't done it yet. I don't have the
I will
discipline.
say, I did it during quarantine, and I just it's the reason I have this show. This right here
Really?
is the reason I have the Apple. Yeah, all
Okay.
of it. All that kinda stuff. So, yeah, I think I'm almost scared to see what you would do if you did the artist way because you've already won 6 Grammys and have a number 1 New York Times best-selling book and, have, direct lines to Joni and Elton. The sky's the limit, Brandi Carlile. Let's see what happens. Thank you so much for this conversation and for this
Thank
book,
you
and
so much. I don't want it to end. I wanna hang out.
I know I wanna hang. Well, yeah, I'm fully vaxxed. Let's hang. I'm ready.
Cool. Me too.
Thank you.
Right on. I love you, buddy. Thanks for this
Love
amazing
you.
chat. What a pleasure.